Good morning, guys. I hope you're all doing well today. Coming at you with the next excerpt of my first novel in a series, Black and White Odyssey of Eden, continuing where I left off in the last video. So let's have at this. The scientist's eyes continued to dart back and forth, meeting the technician for only a moment. Despite their torment, he intended to convey only love to the technician, and how truly important and precious he was, no matter how insignificant he felt himself to be. And this flash was all that was required. "Thomas," the scientist said frantically, his voice loud and cracking. "Thomas." His repetition of Thomas's name grew so loud that the walls of the hall began to quake, with dust and debris falling from the vaulting ceiling. Thomas remained emotionally unmoved by this, though his wide eyes were trained on the scientist's. His hands raised orans, walking purposely towards him. "James, what news? How are you here?" The technician began to sob in contempt for himself, and the paltry nature of his efforts up to this point in his life. How could he have betrayed this man, the scientist, whom he loved so much, despite having only met here, for the first time, in person? At the end of all things, he stood, raging at the dying of the light, the last ember, that the darkness in its eternal struggle could never put out. The technician was ashamed. He dropped from his hands the documents he was holding and fell to his knees, palms on the ground. The scientist, despite the veritable eternity in which he had toiled within the chamber, remained recognizable to Thomas. He was not simply familiar, but burned into Thomas's memory, a branding fashioned in the crucible of adversities unspeakable and unfathomable, yielding to a trust unbreakable, and a friendship unshakable. Indeed, the scientist's physical appearance remained, in the aggregate, unchanged from the era in which he first entered into his endless scenario. But this deceived, for the truth lay behind his eyes. Nevertheless, through all the pain, born one singular, infinitesimal triumph, a proof of concept of infinite importance. The air around the scientist almost seemed to take on a dark, authoritative hue, though no technology, exotic or otherwise, was perceivably employed to elicit the gravitas effect. It was simply him, his presence, and one to which Thomas was deeply accustomed. This time, however, it was a significant percentage deeper than what he had remembered. Through the scientist's frantic scanning of the room, his eyes eventually and inevitably met Thomas's. Thomas's arms remained compassionately extended in an effortless reverence, and his focus undisturbed. The scientist needn't say a word. Thomas knew what he wanted, a near telepathic connection between the two of them. He calmly rushed into the chamber from whence the scientist came. Upon entering, the room was filled with the holographic projection, with the scientist's console lit up in the center. The scene remained frozen in place. Thomas had pored over this exact scene himself. He knew its seemingly inevitable conclusion, and the hopeless futility in attempting to change its outcome or any aspect of it, at least for himself. But he also knew the grander scale of things. There were things he knew, one thing in particular, that the scientist did not. A thing that, even if Thomas tried to tell the scientist, would sound only as static to his ears. It was a reality that only the scientist could create, and Thomas was merely a witness. Thomas turned various knobs on the console, and the scene played out before him in real time. Jared's words fell like celestial masses on Thomas's soul, words he wasn't entirely certain he would ever hear. But here they were, real objects, in some obscure and prescient past future. Alright, that's this section. I'll come at you with the next one later. Love y'all. Peace.